Welcome to the Bladefit Today podcast, where we discuss the lively world of historical fencing and everything else related to the sword arts around the globe. Brittany St Leafy is a highly skilled sword instructor and a veteran member of the Mordhau Historical Combat in Mesa, Arizona. With years of experience in Hema, she has become one of the most respected instructors in the U.S. and is known for her expertise in the art of sword fighting. Brittany's passion for sword fighting began at the tender age of 19, when she was introduced to the world of historical fencing for the very first time. She was immediately drawn to the beauty and grace of swordplay and decided to pursue it as a lifelong passion. Over the years, she has honed her skills through rigorous training, dedication, and a deep understanding of the art of Hema. As an instructor at the Mordhau, Brittany... Oh, you know what, Brittany? I messed that up. I'm going to say that again. As an instructor at the Mordhau, Brittany is responsible for teaching students the intricacies of sword fighting, including both the technical and strategic aspects of the art. She takes pride in her ability to help students develop their skills and is known for her patient, supportive teaching style that encourages her students to push themselves to their limits. In addition to her work as an instructor, Brittany is also an active participant in the Hema community. She has competed in numerous tournaments and events, both locally and nationally, and has won several awards for her performance. Her dedication to the sport has earned her the respect of her peers, and she is often sought out for advice and guidance from other members of the Hema community. Away from the Hema Club, Brittany is an accomplished social media personality. She is known for her cutting technique, using interesting mediums, and has multiple medals in cutting tournaments, including SoCal Sword Fighting, Combat Con, and Sword Squatch. Despite her many accomplishments, though, Brittany remains humble and focused on her passion for sword fighting. She believes that Hema is a lifelong journey and that there is always something new to learn and discover. Her dedication and commitment to the art of historical fencing has made her a valuable member of the broader Hema community and an inspiration to all those who share her passion. Brittany St Leafy, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. That is the most epic intro I've ever had.
You deserve it. You deserve it. Kudos to you, Brittany.
Thank you.
Yeah, so life's been pretty busy with you. We've been, trying to connect back and forth to get this thing going, this episode. And, well, you know what? For those who don't know, why don't you share a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, the marvelous intro kind of covered it all. But, I'm the head instructor at Mordhau Historical Combat in Arizona. I'm originally from Canada. I'm a transplant, and so I started my Hema club in 2018 after having doing Hema for a really long time. And I've been running my sword school here ever since, and it's just grown. We started as a little park club. It was like me, my husband, and like one student, and we started in a park, and then it's kind of grown into something much, much bigger, and it's been a wild ride, so it keeps me busy.
Very cool. Yeah, I had a really nerdy thing pop into my mind, like, the journey is like a sword duel all by itself, but I'm not sure how I could tie that all in. So I'm just going to not say it, or I'm going to say it halfway. I said it without saying it.
There, yeah, you put it out there. You put it into the universe. I mean, I guess it's kind of like that, sort of.
Yeah, so it's interesting though. You say you started out as this smaller like backyard club sort of club, where you casually meet up, and now you have one of the preeminent Hema clubs in the country. I think that's pretty fair to say.
I would, I mean, not to brag too much, but I think we are one of the larger, actual brick and mortar locations in the United States. Mm-hmm. I think there's only a handful that are bigger. So yeah, I mean, we've grown a ton since starting up.
Yeah, it really is an inspiration. That's fantastic, and you've got the receipts to prove it. You've got the air conditioning bills that you can show everybody. Yeah, I have a brick and mortar here in Mesa, Arizona.
Yeah, it's not all it's cracked up to be. I mean, when we started in a park, I had really big dreams. Like I knew from the moment that we started things out there outside without air conditioning in Arizona,
Hmm.
that it needed to be something bigger. I had such a big idea for what I wanted out of a sword school. I didn't want a
Hmm.
sword club. I didn't want a sword group. I wanted a sword school. And that meant, really shooting for the stars. And so everything I did was sort of a long-term plan to get into my own space and have my own business and operate it like that. So
That is wonderful. It's just the clarity of vision, right? Like you knew exactly the I'll say the medium of what you wanted to accomplish, and
yeah.
step by step, here we are. And
Yeah, there's a little
yeah.
bit of like sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I'm riding your coattails, so to speak. I'm like, I don't have my own building, but I do have a space that I rent,
Yeah.
hourly, and so we're doing that. It's funny because I had a similar vision, or experience, I guess. I was outside. I used to live in San Diego County. That's where I first picked up the sword, like Hema style, and I did it for fitness, and it was a very solo journey for me. And I had a lot of time to think and just kind of zen out. And I did it for fitness initially,
Mhm.
and for 6 years, I didn't have anyone around me to spar with or practice with, and it was an interesting journey. But there was just one day it just hit me really hard, like, you need to share this with other people. You need to open up a school at some point in your life. You have to do this thing, and it's going to look like this, and you're going to do it. And 12 years later, I'm where I'm at, right? But it hasn't been easy, has it?
Oh God, it never is. It's
Yeah,
really
so
not.
you're right. And so gosh, we're just diving right into the meat of this thing. So
Oh
let's
yeah.
get into it a little bit. So let's kind of open up the hood, and let's look at that engine. So from A to Z, Z being where we're at now, how did that journey go, and how are you able to build? What were the steps that were required for you to get to the starting point to now your school?
Yeah, so um I guess there's sort of a long version of that story. I'll try and, cut it down a little bit, but I have to admit, when I first started, there's a little bit of like fake it till you make it. Like I was very aware that I was in a park, but the way I ran things, even though it was like me and literally two other dudes who happened to be my husband and his very close friend. It's not like I, gathered these students. They were like people close to me. But we operated immediately as if we were a functioning school. Um, we had formal classes, we had set times, and eventually, when we moved out of the park, we got a dance studio that we were renting hourly. And I dived headfirst into I need a code of conduct, like right away. And it was like, we maybe didn't need it that early on because there were so few of us that we kind of just, got along and we were all friends and there was some unspoken sort of like
Mm-hmm.
expectations. But I was like, no, we're going to grow eventually and need it. And I would rather just have that in place already and make it part of the culture. But like, it was so much more than I needed at the time. So like I don't know how to explain it. It's like I had little dog syndrome, you know? We were like we were like a little school, but like acting like a big school. And so you kind of have to fake it till you make it. And that's sort of how it started. And so I always had that drive to be like, okay, one day this is going to be useful. This is going to be relevant. And I need to have expectations and a club culture that's implemented before we get too big, before we go, oh man, now we've got 30 members and maybe now we need a code of conduct. Like, we just had it from the beginning,
Yeah.
and operated like a big school right out of the gate. So I think that's sort of the one thing that maybe a lot of people don't do, is they don't think in those long-term kind of plans, and they just kind of go with, oh well, we're small, we don't need that right now, and we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. And there's
Yeah.
something said for that, because you don't want to overburden yourself or stress yourself out, or put too much on your plate before you need to. But there is something to be said for a lot of like pre-planning and forethought.
You're right, and I think that separates the well, you said fake it till you make it a couple times, but that, I think that's what separates the fakers from the makers. It's you're building, you're thinking ahead, you're getting out front, because it is important. I mean, a code of conduct. My goodness, I mean, we're literally throwing swords at each other, not throwing, but we're throwing the swords at each other.
Yeah.
There has to be, like you said, there has to be that cooperative mindset of, hey, I'm here to improve myself. You're here to improve yourself. We're here, and it's inevitable. As we do this thing together, we are going to, we need to build this sense of camaraderie. We have to all be on the same page, right? This all has to go in accordance with, the school, its vision, and as harmoniously as possible. We need to be sort of moving together, and ultimately, right, the schools serve the community in the area, right? So you can't be totally different from where your school is at,
Right.
but it all has to be just cohesive and getting out front, as you've done. I mean, that's commendable. That's commendable.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's you sort of build your club culture early on, and it'll change a little bit, but if you don't really know what you want out of your school, like just culturally, like the expectations and how people interact and the rules that they fall under, without that set in place, you're gonna have to build that when it's almost too late. You're kind of
Mm-hmm.
at that point, your rules are being written in blood, and you want to avoid that as much as possible when you're running a sword school.
Yeah.
Like, some of those things are like inevitable. You learn lessons the hard way. Like, I
Yeah.
definitely did, but I
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to learn those lessons the hard way, so I tried to get ahead of it as much as I possibly could.
It makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense. And yeah, so I mean, just the mindset, right? That's well, it kind of betrays like how you are at this point. So okay, so that's cool. So that was one example. Is you're thinking big, right? So it's interesting. As I've talked to different club owners, facilitators, head instructors, however they want to identify themselves as, there's one thing that kind of constantly comes up, and it's imposter syndrome. I think everyone suffers just a little bit from imposter syndrome.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
I think that's healthy, but I think it's also debilitating at the same time.
Yeah.
And I'm not quite sure what to do with it, but it seems, and I'm feeling pretty good about this. The more I get into, talking with other instructors and stuff, everyone's got it, at least to some degree. Some people don't.
Yeah,
And
it's funny because like I I definitely have had it, but I'd say in the last year and a half, it's not really been as prevalent for me as it used to be. Um, and not to say that I
yeah,
think that I'm like, I'm the greatest and I don't have any doubt, but it's eventually gotten to the point where I'm very comfortable doing what I do,
yeah,
but I try to not get too comfortable, because I think if you don't have a little bit of doubt in the back of your mind, or at least like a little bit of, oh, should I be pushing myself? What do I need to do better? Then you're going to run into problems. Obviously, you always need to have that self reflection. But I think
yeah, for
if
sure.
your imposter syndrome is so bad, that you lack the leadership qualities that are needed to run a school. That's something that you need to address, right? But I've
Mm-hmm.
definitely had imposter syndrome. I just, you know, my way of dealing with it was maybe not the healthiest, not the best way to do it. I'll admit it was a little toxic at the time, but it was to constantly prove it to other people rather than just prove
Yeah.
it to myself. I went absolutely ape shit on the tournament circuit, and I was like, I'm not allowed to retire until I have this many medals, or just stuff like that. And a lot of that came from the mentality that I got from my old instructor, who kind of enforced that, because he always said to me, you know, people are always going to be on your heels, and if you get lazy, if you rest on your laurels, you're going to get weak. You're going to fail. Someone's going to come around and they're going to usurp you. And I always had that worry, or that I was never good enough. And so
Mm.
when I first started my Hema school, and that's probably when it's the worst, is when you first get started, because like
Yeah.
you're breaking new ground. You've never been a head instructor of a school before. Like how do you do that, right? That's when it was the worst for me, because like I'd never done it before. So how could I try and convince people to pay a fee to come learn from me when I've never run a sword school before? Like, these are hard things to deal with, but eventually you hit your stride, you come into your own, and you realize like the things that you are capable of. But it really took sitting down and writing out the things that I've done, which sounds so narcissistic, but it definitely helped. I created like a Hema resume, so to speak, and I wrote out all the things that I accomplished that I thought, when I was 19, what would I have been impressed with, right?
Mm.
Like, what could I tell my 19-year-old self when I started Hema, being like, hey, when you're 31 years old, this is the laundry list of things that you'll have accomplished. And when I laid it all out in front of me, I was like, holy shit, I'm actually kind of okay at this. And maybe I do have something to offer. So, putting it into perspective really helps. But a healthy dose of imposter syndrome kind of keeps you from being a little bit of a crazy tyrant, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting how you say that. Just like you say, I have this sword school. I've never done this sword school before, and I'm asking people to pay me so that I
Yeah,
can teach them how to sword fight. And that is so daunting when you just start out.
it is.
Um, and when you were talking, I like analogies and I like history. So immediately when you were talking, I thought of this vision. Now I don't know if this is legend or how true this is, but they attribute Robert the Bruce. He was trying to conquer this castle and they failed like twice, and he was down and out, and he was thinking of giving up, but he saw this. He's taking a break in between, and he sees this spider in the grass, and it's just trying to it's got its web on one of the blades of grass, and it needs to go to the other blade of grass, and there's two prominent blades, right? And it's trying to get over to the other blade, and it just tries and falls and fails. It tries and falls and fails, and it just kept going until finally it did it, and then it just started doing its web, and it just wasn't daunted. It just kept going until it finished its mission. And supposedly that's what gave Robert the Bruce like his last oomph to try one more time, and he was
Right.
successful in taking that castle. Not that he's some moral authority or anything, but that's was kind of uh, this story that kind of stuck with me. I thought, oh, that's kind of cool. And the way that you put it, it's like when you start putting out at the beginning, the information, the advertising or word of mouth, however you do this, like, hey, we're a brand new sword school, come and help make this thing go. I've never done this before, but we're doing it now, so here we are. Let's do this together. Like,
Yeah.
that's a hard ask. It
It is. It is. I mean, ideally, before you start a sword school, you've at least had some sword experience, so you have something to offer. Maybe you're not the head instructor with, X amount of experience, but you know what you're doing. You know how to swing a sword, and you at least know more than some noob walking in on their first day, you have something to offer them.
I think
You
that's
know,
the key, isn't it?
it is, yeah. You just have to know more than the person walking through the door. Um,
I'm
and
glad you said that. Yeah.
that's an important thing to recognize. But Hema's sort of funny because a lot of people's journey is so different. You have so many people who start a Hema school not because they have experience, but because they're like, I want to do this. I don't have any sword schools near me to learn. So if I build it, they'll come. And they learn that way. They just have to be one step ahead of the next person that comes in. But they've never done it either. So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
and there's no formal instruction, there's no formal rank system, there's no belt system in Hema. So it's kind of hard to feel ready. It's not like, you get your black belt and somebody goes, okay, Hema black belt, now you are prepared to teach. You know everything you're supposed to know. Now you're ready. Nobody has that. And that's, I think, why imposter syndrome is so prominent in our community, and the wider sword community too. Not just Hema, but you see this also in Buhurt. You have people coming up as instructors, and not, this is not a knock on them, because I think they're in a very similar position. Is like, oh, you've been doing it 3 years and now you're an instructor. In any other martial art, that would be like a no-no,
Right.
right? So we're kind of in a unique position where a lot of us are thrust into being in a leadership position, maybe not entirely when we're perfectly ready. And I think that's where the imposter syndrome comes in. So I think it's totally normal. You just have to put it in perspective.
Yeah, that's right. And I think it is like if you're talking about a school, it is sink or swim, right? So
Oh yeah.
naturally there's people who come and go, like young people, they're just starting off in their careers, but they want to do something active. And I mean, I remember being 20, 21. I didn't have a whole lot of money. And sometimes I had some, sometimes I didn't. And if there was a sword school, for sure I'd be in there, but I wouldn't be, I wouldn't be able to pay my dues every month. I'm quite sure. For some people it may be different, but anyway, what I'm getting at is people roll through, and sometimes they come back, and sometimes they're just gone. And so there's just sort of this natural thing with all martial arts, right? Where people just kind of come through the doors, and hopefully they're there for years and years, but most of them just aren't.
Yeah. That's
But
been
yeah,
an
yeah,
interesting trial in and of itself. Is like that turnover for students is like, on one hand, you want to retain students as long as possible, but that's not the nature of martial arts. It's very transient. It's very normal to have
mm,
people come in for a few months. Some people stay for years, and that's awesome, and you want to keep those. And then you get attached, and losing students is it's
it's kind
really
of rough,
hard.
huh?
It for certain ones, like a lot of the time I can be like, okay, yeah, it was nice having you for the last few months, and I really, good luck with your endeavors. Or like I've lost students after like a few years, and they're like, I got a job out of state and I'm going.
Yeah,
And it's like, okay, like I'll miss you, let's keep in touch. Good luck. But then sometimes like you lose the ones that just are like, yeah, I'm just kind of just over it. And you're like, ooh, what could I have done differently? When you
mm-hmm.
take it personally, you take it to heart, and it's never easy, because like you walk the line between being a business owner where that relationship is transactional completely, versus you develop a personal relationship, because there's a lot of trust that goes into hitting each other with swords. There's a bond that happens that's beyond just a transactional relationship. It becomes a friendship, and losing those people can actually sometimes hurt. So that's sort of the difficult part of running a martial arts school, as opposed to like running a bakery, for example. Like your customers are more than just your customers. You have to have a personal relationship with them. It's more than just them buying something from you.
Brittany, I think you're pulling a deep thread. I think you spoke to me. No, it's true. I'm a friendly person, and when I get to know somebody, and when we're doing this, thing, whatever it is, I get attached, and it's tough. It's tough as an instructor, because you do have your students, and let's face it. I mean, most instructors, I wanted people to spar with. I wanted to sword fight with people. That's why I started as a sword school, so that I could train people to fight with, because there wasn't enough people to fight with me, And
Yep.
at least that's part of it, because we don't start sword schools for the money. It's just not
Oh
why we do this
God,
thing.
no. Oh my God, no. Don't if you're looking to make money on this, don't do it. You're just
Don't
wasting.
do it. It's not for the money.
No, it's passion, 100%.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, and like you say, there's this line, right? There's this line between, well, I'm the, hopefully a mentor, maybe, but definitely an instructor. Hopefully my programming is giving somebody that next level where they can, take that and learn and get better. They're walking through the doors, and you got to make sure that there's enough funds to get the rent so that everyone can
Mhm.
come in and grow. Like you take on this responsibility, and so you're not really. And I don't want this to sound wrong. Like you want as an instructor to be surrounded by peers, but the people who walk into your door, in some sense they're not your peers because you're putting in so much into the thing for everybody, right? So it's this
Yeah,
lopsided relationship, and it sometimes it's isolating.
it can be. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm very fortunate in my school where I have a great community of people who are always there to help if I need it. And there's been a number of times where I've had to rely on them or ask for favors, and they always come through for me, and it's incredible. But, there are times where I have to be careful that I don't cross that line between being like, I'm your coach versus I'm your friend.
Yeah.
Because sometimes that can kind of enter into a weird space where it's like, yeah, we're going out for drinks, and suddenly we're talking about uncomfortable topics, but we're not in the school anymore. But all of us are members, and it's like, uh, do I intervene here and go, this is inappropriate, or do I just let it happen because now it's a social situation that isn't within my business realm anymore? So it can get tricky trying to balance those relationships, and then the problem is like everybody's willing to help because they love the community or they love the culture,
Hmm.
until it's like, hey, yeah, I have a $3,000 bill, and sorry, I can't buy new gear for you guys even though you all want it. Like,
Right.
or hey, this toilet is backed up and has stopped working. I guess I'll go take care of that. Will you guys go enjoy the rest of your night? Like, it doesn't just stop. Like they get
Nope.
to go home at the end of the night, and I have to mop for 2 hours. Like, and
Yep.
I'm not resenting that at all. Like, I'm not saying that in a like, oh, fuck them kind of way. It's like, oh, sorry,
Right.
I don't know if I can swear on here. My bad. Uh, sorry.
Yeah, we may bleep that one out. We do have some youth that do
I'm
watch this.
so sorry.
I
Yeah,
should have made that clear.
sorry. Anyway, I don't mean it as like a mean thing, but sometimes it can feel isolating because you know when times get tough or when push comes to shove, it's on me. It's nobody else's responsibility to pay that rent. It's nobody else's responsibility to fix that hole in the wall. It's 100% on me. I'm
Yeah.
the only one with skin in the game. It's my name on the lease, and if it fails, I lose my house. Like,
Yeah.
and I don't think other people realize that, and that's fine. I mean, that's not their job to realize that.
Sure. And that's kind of, that mantle that you take on yourself because you want to share this so badly, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't I feel bad putting on what your motivation might be, but well, so let's get into that. Like,
Yeah.
why do you do it?
Why do I do it? That's evolved, actually. That's evolved over time. I think when I started, I had a very different Hema journey than most people. I came out of a Hema school that was an established brick and mortar Hema school. So
Yeah.
I started in a way that most people don't. And I saw it as like, oh, this is a cool thing to do. And my life kind of just took some funny turns, and I was like, why not? Let's try it. Let's prove that I'm actually capable of this, because my head instructor made me feel like I wasn't. And so it was kind of like a spite project instead of a passion project. which should never be
Whatever works.
motivating. Yeah, it should never be the motivating factor, but heck, it really was. Um, and so it's changed over time, and now it's like this is gonna sound so sappy and like needlessly deep, but
We go deep on this show.
yeah, this is one of those things where my motivations kind of started to change when, as we got bigger, I was introduced to people that I normally maybe wouldn't interact with in my normal life, right? People that just come from different experiences, different backgrounds, what have you. And you can see how having a community like a sword school has impacted their lives, which again just sounds so dramatic, but like, Hema attracts the nerdy adults who never did sports and are maybe socially awkward and don't have a deep friends group. They come in and they just attach. And you can see how important it becomes to them, and you're like, "Oh wow, like I'm building more than a sword school. I'm building a chosen family for a lot of these people." And so it's
Yeah.
like, "Okay, now I need to make my space more than just a training area. Now I'm going to add couches and maybe a mini fridge so that people can hang out." Um, or even things like I have some people who have physical disabilities or different types of neurodivergencies, and they they benefit so much from having that community that I'm like, huh, okay, this is sort of why I do this. It's those moments where I realize that it has a larger impact on other people that really makes me go like, okay, this is worth it. All of that stress, this is worth it.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's not like I'm out there, literally changing lives in like these massive ways, but it does make a difference. It makes me feel like it is worth it, and I'm doing more than just like, okay, guys, let's just swing swords at each other. Like there's more to it than that, and yeah, and that opens up its own kind of can of worms of like the responsibilities that we have as instructors or as coaches in terms of like liability or how we treat people and the impacts we have on their lives, and how important it is for us to maybe be cognizant of how we treat people and why, so but that's its own other whole other topic.
Yeah, that's a whole nother deep topic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, you've said some very poignant things. It's like being a HEMA instructor is like, it's like being a people gardener kind of. And what I mean,
I love
you
that, a people gardener.
yeah,
I
you're
love
just
that.
you're just putting in, you've creating this space and you're watering it, right? And the water is just your program. It's everything you're putting, onto the table. And what's important to you is going to grow. And people who are attracted to that, they're going to be a part of that, and they're going to grow, and they're going to grow their way,
Yeah.
and we can kind of, as a coach, you got to let people have their journey,
Yeah.
right? Because it's their journey. You're just providing a space, and hopefully it's a good one.
Yeah.
We try to make it a good one, but yeah, we're gardening people, I think.
I like that. That I really do. Because like I said, I started in a school that in some aspects was really great because, like I said, it was a brick and mortar, so that was really cool. I got formal instruction, which a lot of HEMA people don't get when they first start. It's usually very informal.
Mm-hmm.
We had a built-in rank system. We had a whole stable of instructors. Like I had a lot of things at my disposal in terms of like learning a martial art in a more traditional way.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, the social or cultural environment was,
Cobra Kai.
yeah, it's funny you say that. I watched the first season. I've watched all the seasons, but I watched the first season of Cobra Kai, and I watched it, and I was like, wow, this is legitimately triggering, and I need to take a pause here.
Oh no, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it was wild. Like the parallels, I was like, holy shit. Like it was crazy. I was like, man, I have some trauma that I maybe need to unpack here. But yeah, and so it's made me very cognizant now when I run my own school It taught me some really hard lessons of what not to do. And in a sad way, like it kind of sucks that I had to go through it and I have, those like emotional scars, I guess. But I'm glad I did it because I'm very cognizant to not repeat that
Yeah.
and to build a culture that is safe. Like you said, like a gardener, I'm trying to, take the weeds out, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's important that as coaches and instructors we reflect on how we how we teach and why. The why is really important. If you're there because you like being in control of people, you like being the big guy in the room and that makes you feel good, um you know maybe step back and reflect on that versus I really just want to share this passion with somebody and I feel good when I see people do better and get better. It's sort of just a, what's the word I'm looking for, intention behind it.
Yeah. Yeah. Different intention.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that makes a big difference in how things grow and how the culture gets shaped.
I agree. The intention is everything. What you're trying to build.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, 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 yeah. It's interesting. The last podcast, I was talking with Kai Tomas, and we were talking about real violence versus mock violence.
Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. It's related. It's not exactly the same as this topic, but for whatever reason. So he's in Virginia. A lot of his friends are military who have deployed.
Okay.
Yeah, and so he anyway, martial arts, but also self defense instructing. He was talking about the real violence and how that's just this destructive force. But then how the mock violence kind of builds this community.
Mm.
And for the uninitiated, they don't understand, why are you so violent in class doing these martial arts and you guys have swords and yada yada. It just looks so horrible. It's like, no. This is controlled. We're
Yeah.
all here. We're all smiling. This is great. We actually don't want to hurt people.
Yes.
These are all our friends, right? We're just kind of doing this thing together, even though it's not choreographed, right? Within reason, it's reasonably safe as far as sports and hobbies and activities go for adults.
Right.
But things could happen. But if it wasn't a little dangerous, we wouldn't be interested.
Right.
But that's the thing, right? The mock violence builds community. The actual violence erodes and destroys
Yeah.
community.
Yeah, it does. And I think, that's something that any martial arts enthusiast is really fascinated by, is that line between, you know, the mock versus the real. And it's like, oh, would that work in the streets? And my
The way
my
you
heart,
said that, the streets.
oh, dude, people. Anyway, I'm not even gonna get into that. Um, my husband and I, we founded the club together, and we had agreed that even though he is perfectly qualified to be teaching something like modern self-defense, we wanted to avoid that completely for multiple reasons. One was like just an insurance liability reason.
Yeah.
I think it's, it can be very dangerous to teach people something and be like, yeah, this is going to save your life. I think that's just a level of responsibility that is not something we wanted.
Yeah.
So
Fair enough.
when we approach it, we do approach it from the historical kind of aspect of like, well, sword fights don't really happen anymore. Well, looking at the news lately, I guess that's not really true. But for
It's mostly true.
mostly true for most people,
In the
sword
West,
fights
it's
don't
mostly
really
true.
happen. So we're learning this from like an anachronistic or recreation kind of perspective, and we're just here to have fun, and there's a sportive element to it, and we kind of remove the whole like in the streets kind of aspect because it's just not necessary for Hema, I think. And and I might get into some trouble saying that because, like, obviously, like, when we do it, the purpose of, like, test cutting, which is something that I do heavily.
You're not training for the zombie apocalypse, Brittany?
Right? I know.
I am.
You know, there's sort of you get the sharp sword and you want to see what a sharp sword can do. So
Yeah.
that's crossing into the line of real violence to try and test that and push the limit on that versus.
But it's for science.
But it's for science. But yeah, I mean, it's always your intention. If you're teaching people being like, this is how you kill somebody with a sword, like, I feel like that's kind of irresponsible, you know? But again, it's your intention. If it's like, historically, we can look at this manuscript. It's got a ton of blood in it, and look what they could do with this sword, right? Like, that seems to be less visceral than just being like, yeah, with your partner, you're going to pretend that you're going to completely sever their limb. Like, it's just like, what? Like,
I've never explained it like that.
Well, there are some who do. Anyway.
I take it back. That's not what I say at the first.
At first.
But realistically though, I mean, like, if we were discussing, okay, this hit, that was a little light, and that's another thing, right? It's a punch is not a punch, a kick is not a kick in Hema.
Right.
We're after the amplitude, or we're after the edge alignment, or we're after, like, so we kind of ascertain.
Yes.
In our sparring, what would this have done? What would we suppose this would have done? Because we don't actually know. We have a good idea. But specifically at that time, it's like, well, if we does that. So at that point, maybe I might explain a little bit, well, with this amount of force and this edge alignment and this cut, it might have cut your hand off. So.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we talk about martial validity as like a really important aspect of Hema, especially when we start sportifying it in a tournament setting. But I always think that we approach it as a community with the understanding of, there are limits, and nobody's talking about it in like the application of real world killing people with swords. Even though
that's not the explicit thing. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Because I think otherwise it's sort of just venturing on irresponsible in terms of how you do it, and it just comes back to what we were talking about before, which is intention.
Excellent. Nice circle back there.
Hey,
yeah. Yeah, very cool. Hey, I was just thinking of this. Let's take a look at your website here. I want to share.
Oh, great.
Yeah, let's share the screen here. Okay, that's the one. So, can you see that?
I can. Look at
cool.
My website. Beautiful.
It is beautiful. Your symbol's gorgeous.
Yeah, it sure is. It's something.
There's nothing that screams out people garden like this, I tell you.
Right. It's sort of funny you mentioned the logo. There's a weird history to it. So it was actually designed by our friend Dylan Smith, who's an incredible artist, and he's actually like done so much art within the Hema community. Like, most people, I think, on the West Coast at least, are tattooed by him. It's pretty cool. But my husband had commissioned him to do this piece of art in like 2015 or 2016, before Mordhau Historical Combat was a school that I was involved with.
Mm-hmm.
Just Mordhau was started as a study group that my husband had under the Phoenix Society in Phoenix, Arizona. It was just a little chapter study group so that he could do the Germanic systems instead of doing the Italian systems that the Phoenix Society was studying.
Okay.
So he just wanted a cool, badass logo that was like edgy. And it has nothing, there's no symbolism to it whatsoever. Like, people ask all the time, whoa, what's the 3 ravens? What's the skull? There's literally nothing. There's no,
it's cool.
Yeah, there's no symbolism to it whatsoever. But he paid a few $100s for this piece of art. So when I finally come around in 2018 and go, hey, let's start a sword school, he was like, I've got art and a name. And I was like, all right, cool, let's do it. And so then we picked up this logo. So
they named the video game after you guys.
Oh, God, that is so, it's so frustrating too, because like technically Mordhau existed before the game.
Yep.
But whatever, that's neither here nor there. So we've actually
You
talked
should
about,
sue him.
no, I don't want to get
No, you
involved
probably
in that.
shouldn't.
We've talked about changing the logo and rebranding because like we're a KDF school, we're a Germanic school. What the heck does like Nordic, Celtic not work have to do with what we do? Like it's not super representative. It's
Yeah.
just badass looking. And at the time in like 2015, 16, Hema, it was like skulls and Hema black was like the trend.
It
And now
definitely
it's sort
was.
of like it's not anymore. So like I
Mhm.
feel like we're kind of due for a rebrand, but again, that's just more money and more time, so it's like
I hear you. You know, we recently changed our logo too. I mean, on my shield here, this was like our.
Oh yeah.
Well, anyway, I can't pull it off without destroying everything.
Oh
But
goodness.
yeah, but yeah, and then so we've rebranded. Now we've got this cool little winged lion up here, and
Oh yeah.
yeah. So I thought, it's time because half of my school is youth,
Mhm.
and you know, I just in the back of my mind, I thought, you know, skulls are cool, but everyone thinks that it's you know, a football team. Everyone thinks that I'm wearing a Raiders t-shirt, and I'm not.
Right. Yeah, I think the skull
And some moms hate
skull thing-
skulls.
yeah, the skull thing I think is just sort of um I don't want to say outdated because I don't want to offend anybody else who uses skulls in their logo, but
Yeah.
it's sort of just like the old Hema, the Hema black, cool, we're edgy, we're not the SCA, like
We're not Olympics.
Yeah,
we're,
it's like,
we're not Olympic fencers.
and I've talked to Kyle about it before. We've talked about having something a little bit more representative of what we do. But at the same time, this logo, we got so many compliments on it because it's a really great logo. Like Dylan did amazing work with it.
It's
So,
beautiful.
like, yeah, and it looks cool as a back patch. Like it's kind of badass, but yeah, it's not. I don't know what my student came up with like a retrofitted lore or symbolism. He's like, yeah, it's Ringek, Danzig, and Lev picking the brain of Lichtenauer, and I was like, done. That's
Oh, perfect.
done. That's what we're going with. That's the
That's
symbol.
the three ravens.
It's yep, we're good. Done. So we've retrofitted that into the lore.
I love it. No, that's great. No, that's how the everyone does it with their multi-billion-dollar IPs.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great. So we've got this, and you know, I have to say that it's a really nice camera work.
Thank you.
Look at these guys. It's just
Oh,
everything.
that's my handsome husband. I love looking at his face. He's beautiful. That photo was taken by Angel Uribe, so that was a professional photo. And then my
Nice.
photo was my iPhone in my studio.
Well, it says a lot about what iPhones can do, I gotta say.
Yes. My favorite part of that page is when I first built the website, I told Kyle, I'm like, hey, I need like an instructor bio for you. You know, can you give me something? And he's like, yeah. And he just kept getting sidetracked because that's kind of his MO. And he never got around to it. And I'm like, okay, you know what? Screw it. And I just put in a placeholder so that I could publish the website. And I just jokingly tossed in Super Champion. And then the website went live and I totally forgot about it. And then I've never changed it.
It is kind of badass, you know, because
Mine's all like fluffy and professional, and then his just speaks for itself. He is the super champion.
he's got a sharp sword and a shiny armor and the devil
Yeah.
may care, 1,000-yard stare, super champion.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, that fits.
Yes. Yeah. So it's sort of
Oh,
a
my
running
God.
joke. We just kept it. So
You know, I was reviewing that a little bit. I snickered. I was like, you know what? There's a story behind that, and it's perfect.
yep. Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah. So, guys, listeners, I mean, you know, we're a small community, we're a growing community, and it's wonderful. So, I mean, if you guys happen to be in the Mesa area, or if you visit the Mesa area, why don't you guys pop into Mordhau and take a look at what they got? Because
Oh yeah, we love visitors. We're always very happy to have people come in, check it out, come fight with us.
you know, in fact, I visited it. It was
Yes.
and
I
that was
remember.
really fun. It was cool, and I was like, oh yeah. this is great. I get to meet Brittany, and
Oh, nice.
yeah, and just watching how you mentioned the couches. I really liked the couches.
Yeah,
Um,
they are my favorite. I spend a lot of time on them.
it was super cozy, and how do I put it? It just felt like, oh, this is a sense of community. It's belonging. You could kind of chill and look at some sword books or whatever. There's cubbies for the people who come in. That's a really nice touch, and
Thank
yeah, and everything about it just seemed nice. There's the medals on the wall, and I was like, man, this is a nice space. This is a nice space. You walk in, and it's like it's Hema time. And
Thank
yeah,
you.
no, you're
It's all
welcome.
deliberate. It's all very deliberate. I really wanted to create a space where you come in and it looks clean, it looks professional. We are a martial arts school. I wanted to avoid the kind of, and again, I'm not criticizing other people, but like I've been to other HEMA schools and it's sort of like, and maybe it's because like they're renting a space for a couple of hours, so it's not like they can do anything with the space. But
Hmm.
or like I've been into like some jujitsu studios and like it looks kind of like slapped together and kind of hodgepodge, and I'm like, I we already kind of come in as like underdogs, not being taken seriously, doing HEMA. So
Yes.
like I want people to walk in and it looks legit. It looks like it was intentional. You see the medals on the wall and you go, oh, okay, so they do a martial art, and there's a little lobby area, and like it's you know we wanted to be lend as much credibility as possible on the initial impact when you walk in.
Yeah, and it was really cool watching your school operate. So people came in, there's the hellos, there's the, changing things out, the cubbies, personal effects and stuff. And, everyone starting out just working together, doing the warm ups and then starting with the drills and then, dressing up and doing the fighting. It just seemed so crisp and everyone was happy and learning new stuff. And that gleam in people's eye that they get when they're like, yeah, we're about to go here. We're going to go real soon. We're just gonna get this thing done. The gleam that's always fun to watch. People coming in and they're hungry for the fight.
Yeah,
That's
yeah, I definitely tried to create a space where people felt comfortable and wanted to be there. Like I remember, I'm not going to say where I went, but I done a catch wrestling for a little while, and I was at this one school for a few months, and it didn't last long because I went in and it was just kind of gross, and I
hmm.
didn't want to stick around. And as soon as class was done, I packed up my stuff and I left. And I'm like, I never want my school to be like that. I want people to be comfortable to stay. And,
Yeah.
I have people that just kind of come in, not even to do class anymore. They just want to be there because they're like, things are stressful at home, and this is where I can be. There's a couch and there's
Nice.
food and there's books and there's Wi-Fi, and well, there's not Wi-Fi yet. That's my next plan.
Yeah.
Um, but somewhere to just be, and
Mm-hmm.
that's I think the community part of the school.
And there's some nice food around the place too.
There, yeah, we're in a great location. There's walking distance for like everything you could get. But I've
Yeah.
actually started like stocking my mini fridge, not just with water, but now I just added, oh my God, my students are so spoiled. We added like a
You need a
coffee
vending
bar.
machine, Brittany.
I know. We added a coffee bar because somebody had donated like a mini Keurig. And
Ah.
so now we've got like a fruit basket, and I fill it with bananas and apples every Sunday. And we've got like different kinds of tea and hot chocolate. And my students are like, they'll come in and
Ooh.
they'll just leave stuff. They're like, oh yeah, I went to Costco and I bought an extra large box of popcorn. So here's like 8 bags of popcorn. And I'm like, cool, it's going to sit on the microwave. Like, and people just kind of keep adding to it. And so now we've got this whole like almost cafeteria set up now. It's like, it's so cozy.
That's awesome. That's great. Now, from when I was there, you have since expanded and you have more square footage.
Yes.
Can we talk about that journey?
Oh my God, it's a journey. Yeah, so we started with 2,000 square feet, and it wasn't a super functional 2,000 square feet because like the front room is 1,000 and the back room is 1,000, but the back room also has a bathroom and the water heater, and it kind of you lose a little bit of the actual usable floor space.
Yeah.
So I think we were functioning on maybe 1,100 square feet. which was fine to get started. It was perfect for us to get our own space. But we started growing, and it was one Saturday morning, and I ended up having 30 people crammed in to that front room. And I was like, oh my God, this is dangerous. Like, this isn't a good thing. And then the next Saturday, it was like 29 people. And then the next Saturday, it was like, again, almost 30. And I'm like, oh my God, like, this is a problem. Especially when you have longswords, they take up such a larger footprint, right?
They do. They do.
So, like, then I started noticing all of a sudden that new people were still coming, but some of my intermediate and my senior students weren't coming as often. And so I was like, what's going on, guys? Like, are you good? And they're like, well, it's just too crowded. I feel like I can't really do anything. And I was like, oh, this is a problem. So
standing room only.
Pretty much. So,
which is a problem when you're swinging long swords.
It really is. We had to get really creative about using the space, and we managed, but it kind of came to a point where we're like, okay, fortunately our lease is coming up in a couple of months. We can either find a bigger space or, you know, maybe add more classes to the schedule. Like, we had to get creative. Yeah. And by chance, like, just completely serendipity, the space immediately next to us had been vacant for like 7 years. But the problem was that it was 4,000 square feet. It was huge. And we were like, oh, we'll never be able to afford that. And we'd kind of just gently inquired with the landlord, like, hey, what's going on with the space next door? And he was like, well, I can't actually lease it to anybody because the water shut off and most of the electrical actually runs into your suite.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, really? and it was a mess. Like, the building, the suite itself was just, there was no drywall on the walls. The windows were shattered out. Like, it was a big deal. But he had come back and he offered us a really reasonable rate, but the catch was we had to renovate it ourselves. He was not going to help with a single thing. And I thought, yeah, we can do it. So we took a risk, and we expanded to a total of 6,000 square feet. We dropped about $20,000 in renovations, and it's actually been really great. Like, we've had it now for about a year, and I'm really enjoying the extra space. But the problem now is our lease is coming up again, and we're going to have to renegotiate. And now we've made a completely marketable 6,000 square foot space that has all the improvements, and he's going to want to bring it to market value. But we also don't need 6,000 square feet. Like, we started to notice that 2,000 was too small, but 6 was too big. So, like, do we want to go and look for something in the middle where we wanted, which was about 3,000 to 4,000, which is a lot more affordable? Or do we want to try and keep the 6,000 and really, really hustle? Which are both viable options. It's just, you know, kind of what happens with our negotiations. So it's committing. It's been a journey, but it was a lot of work, you know, and all the renovations and the money put into it. It's like, we didn't need that much space, but the deal that we were given was like, we kind of need it right now. Because like, we were kind of stuck. It was either 2,000 square feet and starting to lose membership because it was too small, or take the shot and go bigger and see where we're at in a year. And now, a year later, we have options again. So it's constantly in flux. You know, I think that's sort of the nature of the beast when you have your own commercial space, is like, you know, things are constantly changing and you have to adapt and be pretty flexible. So yeah, but it's been interesting.
It sounds interesting. It's a good set of problems, but it is a set of problems. Yeah, I don't envy that. I mean, I pay for our school, we pay our rent, But see, here's the thing. I can't decorate it the way I want to. I
Yep.
can't hang up cool things on the wall. I can't put the bougie poster of like the knights and the this and that all over the place. I can't,
Yeah.
I can't make it the way that I want it to be because, the hour before softball's in there. So,
Yeah, and
and they
that's
hit those balls and they break everything, right? So, yeah. So,
yeah, the I would never, now that I've had a taste of that freedom to have my own commercial space, and I can paint the walls whatever I want. If I want to put up
yeah.
a poster of whatever, I can do that. That's within my power.
Hmm.
Now that I've gotten a taste of it, I don't think I can ever go back.
Yeah.
But I sometimes miss the days where I didn't have to worry about the maintenance aspect of the studio
That's right.
and paying hourly, especially as a smaller school. Like we started in a dance studio paying hourly, and it was awesome,
Hmm.
um, because the commitment was low
Yeah.
and the rent was variable. If we were having a tough month and we couldn't afford it, we could cut back our hours.
Yeah.
Or if we started growing and we needed another day, hey, can I add another hour this day of the week? Yeah, sure, go ahead. Like, you know, that flexibility and low commitment and low responsibility was awesome. But like you said, you can't make it what you want. You can't always store your gear. It's hard to grow a school in a space that isn't your own,
Yep.
because people come in and they go, am I in the right place? Like, this doesn't look like a sword school. This looks like a dance place, or.
Yep.
So, but when you get into a commercial space and it's your own, the freedom is awesome. You can do whatever the heck you want, but, you know, no one's going to clean up after you. If there's no toilet paper in the bathroom, that's on you.
Hmm.
Um, those windows aren't going to clean themselves. The floors aren't going to mop themselves. Like, all of that falls on you. When you're renting for an hour at a time at another place, like a dance studio or a karate place, they take care of all of that for you.
Yeah.
You never have to think about it. So there's pros and cons. I miss those days, but at the same time, now I've tasted that sweet nectar of freedom, and I'm like, can't give that up.
Yes. That's right. That's right. It's
Yeah.
funny that way, isn't it? It's like, yes,
Yep.
it's a big responsibility, but would you want to give it up ever? And for a lot of people, the answer is no, no, no. I
No.
just want to keep going. I like
Yeah.
this.
At this
Hmm.
point, it's like I'm in too deep. My pride won't let me go back.
Yeah.
So, and I think now I'm at such a large membership. Like my student body is so large that going backwards would probably just be to the detriment of that membership. I'd probably lose a ton of students going
Oh,
backwards, working backwards that way. Uh,
right.
so at this point, like, I'm in too deep. I gotta keep going forward in that progression. But that's just, like I said, that's the nature of the beast.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about it. Let's talk about your school a little bit. So, if I'm a new student and I'm coming in through your doors
Yeah.
at Mordhau Combat, uh, what could I expect? What's the program like?
Well, it's pretty variable, actually. We don't have like a set curriculum, but when people first come in, I usually tell them they can come to any class they want. It doesn't matter. But I usually encourage them to come to our fundamentals class, which is like Saturday mornings. And that is always guaranteed to be very beginner friendly. The language I use is not super historical, because your first time you walk in, you go, okay, guys, today we're gonna do absetsence. We're gonna start with our Oberhau, right? And then we're gonna come up, we're gonna wind, we're gonna use winden, vinden, and you up into ox and you absetsent. Like, that can be really overwhelming.
Yep.
Um, so my fundamentals class, I kind of trim the fat a lot in the language that I use. It's very basic, it's super beginner friendly. And we'll just cover really simple topics that are foundational to fencing. Um, and it's start with a warm up. It's a group class. It's very formal, very structured. It's 1 hour. And then afterwards, I try and pitch them on an intro month with us to kind of just hook them. But and most people take it actually. We have a very high retention off of our first kind of class, which is nice. But
It
we
means
have
good
learned,
instruction.
yeah, I hope so. We have loaner equipment, so it's a very low cost to entry in that regard. Um, and I always make sure I have a handful of intermediate or senior students to kind of be there to help with some of the partner drills because I can't be everywhere at once. And our
Yep.
intro classes are, you know, nowadays 20 is considered small, so I can't be everywhere for everybody all the time. But
That's a lot of new people to deal with.
yeah, heck yeah.
It's like herding cats.
It is like herding cats. Actually, I have 5 cats, so yeah, it's very similar to herding felines. But
And it's not their fault. Like it's
no,
just it yeah, it's just they're trying so hard to do what you're asking them to do, but it's just such a new experience, and then they kind of look around, and if you like you say, it's good that you got those other students there,
yeah,
because if they're not seeing it, it derails
yeah,
pretty quick.
it can,
Yeah.
and having the loaner equipment makes it a lot easier. And then we try to make it as beginner friendly as possible. Like I said, Hema kind of attracts the nerdy folk,
Mm-hmm.
the socially awkward, the quiet, the shy. So I try to make it as comfortable for that type of person as possible. You
Yeah.
know, you don't have to take a huge amount of initiative to like get stuff. I make it very clear, like, okay, hi everybody, welcome. You're gonna get your gear over here. This is sort of what's okay. And like I'm really holding hands in that first day. Um, but then once they're in, I don't hold their hands as much. They're
Yeah.
on their own. Um, but yeah, so we try to be very friendly to our beginners because that new blood is required to grow. So I try to nurture that a lot, as a good gardener should.
Absolutely. I like that. I think we're starting a trend here.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's super cool. So then from the beginner excuse me. Hold on a second. I'm in my garage. My studio's in my garage, people. Sorry to break the magic. And it is starting to bloom, and we need to dust this place. So,
I get it.
permiso.
The allergies that I have in Arizona spring is not fun, so I get it.
Yeah. So, okay. So the beginners, they kind of get their feet wet. They're treading water. They're swimming. At what point do they make it to, say, like an intermediate class? What does that look like? Like, what are you looking at for a person to progress?
Actually, I totally leave it up to them. All the
Mm.
classes on our schedule are currently open, with the exception of our advanced class. That is the only thing that has a limitation on it. But anybody can come to any class. The only difference is like, yeah, if you're going to come to our Tuesday longsword class, it's still beginner friendly. Just know that there might be some language that you haven't heard before. We're going to work on techniques that you maybe haven't seen before. But you're still welcome to do it. Most people, when they come to us, they will stay on that fundamentals class for like 4 to 6 classes before they choose to come to another class.
Hmm.
But I don't stop them. They can come whenever they want. Like, it doesn't matter to me. But we do have an advanced class that is limited to a higher rank, just so that I know that if you're there for that class, you know all the terminology. I'm already aware of like the stuff that you do and don't know. And if I tell you to do something, I expect you to already do it. And,
Hmm.
there's no hand holding. It's just, we're going. So that's the only one that beginners aren't allowed in, but that's only one class a week out of how many classes do we have? 6
Yeah.
classes a week. So
Yeah, that's great. So it kind of operates like a ski resort.
maybe surprisingly, as a Canadian, I've never been to a ski resort, so I'm gonna have to take your word for it.
Oh, okay. Well, they have the different symbols, right? So you've got the bunny hill. They call it the bunny hill at first. Where people who are new, they just kind of get their feet wet, and
Yeah.
once they get bored with the little, it's where the kids go, and it's if you've never done it before, that's where you do it. And if you feel adventurous after that, then you venture off to the bigger ones, and then they have the ranking system, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
then
very similar, very similar. You can kind of decide when you want to take on a little bit more.
mhm.
But the really advanced stuff does require some ranking. So
Yeah. Well, cool. No, that's great. That's great. So people get to decide on things, and then, like you say, there's the elite class where you gotta. Well, and the reason why, right? I'm assuming, is because if you don't know what you're doing, that's the dangerous class.
yeah, well, that, and it just sort of slows it down for everybody else, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if we're working on a paired drill that requires a certain amount of base knowledge and you don't know that base knowledge, now I have to come around and explain it to you, and your partner has to wait, or your partner has to teach it to you, and they're not getting the time that they need. So
Yeah.
it's just easier to have an advanced class, where my advanced students can just focus on their own work and not worry about holding anyone's hand.
Yeah. No, that's great. I like it. I like it a lot.
Yeah.
Very cool. Let's
Yeah.
see. Uh, you know what? Let's talk about your let's talk about your cutting for a little bit.
Oh yeah, it's my favorite.
Yeah. So tell us about it.
Wow, that's a loaded. Okay.
That's
So
kind of open ended.
yeah, it is, and that's okay. Because I'm very passionate about cutting, so I could talk about it for like 8 million days. Um, so cutting, basically, I mean, there's a sportive element to it, but there's also a martial element to it. Um, you use your sharp swords and you cut things, right? And that's really all there is to it. It's so easy. I mean, if you just swing it the right way, it'll cut through anything. Um, sorry, that's a dig on some recent social media drama. Anyway, um, yeah,
Even
so
steel.
yeah, it's yeah. So I mean, we use a lot of different mediums. Tatami, I think, is the most traditional medium. We kind of copy and pasted that from the Japanese sword arts community, the Tameshigiri.
Yeah.
Only
Because it's
because
so
like,
cool.
well, there's just nothing better. I mean, it's the best option. It's just really labor intensive. Like you have to, I mean, and expensive. You have to buy the mats, and then you get them. You have to roll them the right way. You have to soak them for the right amount of time. Then you have to drain them. Then you have to spike them, which in and of itself can be really dangerous. Um, and for all of the hours that you put into preparing it, it's cut in 10 seconds and then it's done.
Yeah.
So, which is super cool. Tatami is my favorite, but it's very labor intensive. So
It also sounds very Japanese.
it is, yeah. There's something about like you have to roll it, and it's very ritualized, and you're putting all this time into it just to destroy it in like 10 seconds. It seems very culturally befitting of a
Mm-hmm.
Japanese sword art.
Yeah.
So but it works great for testing sharp swords for Hema as well. But again, it's very expensive. It's hard to come by, and of course, it's labor intensive to get it set up and prepared. So there's other mediums. Paper is something that I really enjoy. Some people are a little skeptical of paper because it doesn't have the same density as tatami, so it doesn't require the same amount of power. But paper is very unforgiving, and it's really good at shaming you when you don't do well. Like if you don't cut the paper right with good edge alignment and good speed, it makes this very loud cracking flutter, and it's so embarrassing and shameful because you're like, dang, I can't cut paper. So and it's an instant feedback, and you're like, okay, time to get better. um but paper's great. It's cheap. The only downside, well, there's a couple downsides to paper, but paper is not messy, but you have to clean up all the cut pieces, and unless you have a good recycling program, it kind of sucks to just throw several
Yeah.
hundred feet of paper into the garbage. So what I did is, one of my friends is a blacksmith, and he was like, "What are you doing with that paper after?" And I'm like, "Oh, nothing." And he's like, "Well, can I use it?" I was like, "Sure." He's like, "I just need paper to pack the products that I make and ship out." And he's
Oh,
like, "I
that's
think it'd
great.
be, yeah." He's like, "I think it'd be a cool gimmick to be able to advertise that my shipping paper is cut by swords. So it
Yeah.
worked out, and I was like, "Yeah, dude, here you go." So I roll it up when I'm done, and I leave it for him, and he uses it.
See,
Um,
that's cool. Cut by
yeah,
swords. Yeah.
yeah. So it works out, but I don't think everybody has that that sick hookup. So unfortunately, it's a little bit wasteful. But it's probably less wasteful than tatami in the long run. But and then of course
Yeah.
there's clay. People who cut clay. I hate cutting clay. Mostly because it's messy and
Yeah.
it's a pain in the ass. But and then there's pool noodles. I hate pool noodles. Pool noodles need to be completely eviscerated from anybody's cutting medium repertoire. It's just, I hate it. Um, dumb. But yeah, I mean, really, you can cut, I guess, anything. The only thing I don't cut is like meat. Because everybody asks, oh, have you ever done like a pig carcass or have you ever cut like meat? And it's like, I have, but then like I wipe down my blades with like motor oil, or gun oil,
Oh
and so
yeah.
like I cut, and then like now my meat is contaminated, like, and I
Mm-hmm.
can't not do that, right? So
Right.
and also I don't know, it doesn't entice me. It doesn't give me the same feedback because
Right.
like the reason I like cutting tatami and paper is you can immediately see the line of your cut. It gives you visual feedback.
Yeah.
Whereas like the meat is so like what's the word? It'll deform a lot through the cut, so it doesn't really give you the same kind of like training feedback.
Yeah.
Um and that's
Interesting.
even more expensive. People are like, "Oh, tatami's expensive, so I'm going to cut meat." And it's like, "What?" Talk about expensive. Holy
Yeah.
moly, you
Yeah.
know? Anyway, sorry. Like I said, I could talk for 8 million days about
No,
cutting. So,
no, that's great. This is a very fascinating topic. So, I'm thinking there's this what is it? There's a medium that you could use on your swords that's food friendly, but it might keep your swords a little bit. But if you're using motor oil or gun oil, and then you got to clean all that up, and then apply this other
yeah.
thing.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'm
it's
sure there are alternatives. I'm a creature of habit.
oh sure,
Um,
yeah,
mhm.
no, yeah,
And now
like
it's just what I use.
yeah. I think it's a zinc.
Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, and
I
they
think
put
like there's a type of gun oil. I think it's called frog lube, and I think that that's food grade. But like, I I don't want to be like put on
right.
record saying that it is because I would
Sure.
hate to like lead somebody astray and then they get horribly sick after cutting their pig carcass and eating it, like
Y-
as one does,
yeah, right. As one does.
as one does.
Now I've seen videos of you cutting paper
Yeah,
with a fetter.
yeah, yeah. That's what I like about paper. Is it's very accessible. So cutting tatami requires a sharp sword, and as most people know, sharp swords can be very, very expensive.
Mm,
Especially if you want to get into. People call cutting the gulf of Hema, because we get very like into our swords and optimizing our cutting swords for tournaments, and you can easily drop $1,000 on a basic tournament sword.
mm,
You don't have to, obviously, but a lot of people choose to.
yeah.
So cutting can sometimes feel a little bit inaccessible from a cost perspective. So when you do paper cutting with a fetter, most people that are into Hema already have a fetter or a blunt sword. So all you need to do is, spend the $50 on paper, run a string through it, and hang it from a rafter or something, as long as you have enough clearance, and away you go. And it's going to give you the same sort of feedback. You're going to train the same way. Um, and that's what makes it great. I'm actually going to Michigan. By the time this comes out, this might already have happened, but I'm going to the AG Open in Michigan. It's hosted by Ars Gladii. And they're doing a cutting tournament, but it's not actually a cutting tournament with sharps. They're doing the tournament entirely using blunt swords on paper.
That is quite interesting.
Yes, yes. I think it's
Wow.
pretty cool. It's a lot less what's the word? Stressful, I think, for new people that have never cut before. I think a lot of people hesitate to enter into cutting tournaments because they don't have a lot of opportunities to cut with a sharp, and they're a little
Hmm.
uncomfortable swinging around a sharp sword. Um, and so at least like if you go with something like this where you're using a blunt on paper, then it's a little bit more beginner friendly, it's more accessible, and they were able to make it free. So I think there was no additional charge to do the cutting tournament. You
Oh
just got to
wow.
do it. So whereas traditionally cutting tournaments are very expensive because you have to cover the cost of tatami.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it was a cool idea, but yeah,
That
I'm
is
definitely
cool.
gonna have to like come home and cut more tatami because it doesn't quite scratch the itch for me, you know.
Yeah.
But I think it's a cool thing to do. It's a great way to get people more experience with cutting and introduce them to cutting, without some of the barriers that are traditionally associated with it.
Yeah, that's really interesting. When just as you say that barrier to entry, when I saw that, I thought, wow, maybe I could do something like that, and
Oh yeah,
just have people. Because in my club, a lot of people don't have their fetters yet, and
right.
so it's like, okay, borrow my fetter, you can do the thing.
Yeah.
Yes, it's that's quite fascinating. So circling back to the pool noodles, what makes them atrocious? Why is it?
I just one I hate how they look. I don't know why. It's not a fair criticism at all. I just think that they're gaudy and they look silly. Um, but also, I don't think they actually provide a whole lot of relevant feedback, from
Mm,
a training perspective. Um, because, on one hand, it's like, oh, you have to be very precise to get just the right angle and just the right speed to cut a pool noodle. Um, but it's like, okay, I can get that from literally everything else. I find them horrifically wasteful, and as wasteful as I can be with paper and tatami, I think it's having a plastic foam medium like that that's not really recyclable, is kind
right.
of wasteful.
What are you
They're
gonna do
su-
with it after that?
exactly, they're super cheap, but also if your sword isn't sharp enough, it will not cut the tatami. Or I'm sorry, it will not cut the pool noodle. But a less sharp sword, I'm talking like less than razor sharp, will still cut tatami. Just it's going to be more difficult, But with a pool noodle, because it's so flimsy, there's no resistance. You could be getting feedback that isn't actually having anything to do with your skill or your form. It could just be that your sword isn't sharp enough, and that kind of like negative bias is not helpful for a lot of people training. And
Right.
especially when most people that have sharps don't know how to sharpen their own swords, they're probably not actually helping themselves at all by cutting pool noodles.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I've never actually done the pool noodles because I thought, oh, that's kind of interesting, but I'm not doing it.
Yeah, and I mean,
Yeah.
like, the really long ones. So, like, what you can do is if you have a traditional, like, tatami cutting stand with, like, a 1 inch dowel spike, most pool noodles also have a 1 inch diameter hole, and you can just kind of stick it on the spike.
Hmm.
But they're so long that they kind of, like, bend over a little bit, so they're not, like, straight. And that makes it very difficult to cut them, like,
Yeah. I
from
can
a
see
training
that.
perspective. It's sort of just like, if that's all you have to cut, that's better than nothing. But like, it's like just go buy paper. It's not worth it in my opinion. But I
Yeah.
digress.
Yeah. So okay. So Michigan, and when is this happening? When is this tourney happening?
May 5th and 6th and 7th.
May 5th, 6th, and 7th. And what's the name of this tournament?
AG Open. Don't
Ah.
I thought I asked him like, is the AG because like the school is ours Gladiator? He's like, no, it's just AG. Oh, I was like, what? I think he was messing with me, but
Oh.
I don't know. But yeah, it's a cool event. It's like I said, run by ours Gladiator, but the main sort of driving force behind it is Sean Franklin, who is one of my favorite people, not just in Hema but in the entire world. He's one of my best friends, and as like anytime he does something, I'm like, I'm right there with you, buddy. I'm gonna support you. So I'm heading up there and
That's
having a good
super
time.
cool.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go cut and I'm gonna go teach, and it's gonna be fun.
Just a little bit of a digression. The sword stem. I mean, that's all his thing, right?
Yep, yep. He
Yeah.
has some other authors that like contribute, but that is his baby, one of his many children.
You know, I think of myself as a relatively bright individual until I get into sword stem. I'm like, This is just insanely incredible and useful, and of course, and all this stuff. And then it's like I can't visualize even what he's talking about here, but I know it's important and relevant. And I'm just gonna grab onto that coattail, and I'm gonna read this thing, and I'm just trying to ascertain the importance
Yes.
of it. But he really gets so deep into, the physics, the mechanics, and just kind of relates that to our martial art, our sport, whatever you want to call it. And it's really fascinating. And he gleans some interesting data and results from that. It's just really fascinating. I'm nerdy enough just to think, wow, this is a really cool tool.
Yeah, I'm not
But I
smart.
fall flat trying to explain it to people in
Yes.
class. Are like, so I'm like,
Yeah,
oh, never mind.
I'm not smart enough to really get sword stem articles most of the time, but I always make sure I click them, I read them, and I go, "Good job, Sean," because I'm supportive and I'm a good friend. But I usually, he's like, "Oh, what'd you think of it?" And I'm like, "I didn't." I didn't. That's not my area of expertise. I'm a sword jock, and my flavor of nerd is art history. So like,
Sword jock.
it just doesn't cross paths for me. But I think the work that he does is extraordinarily valuable. It's an amazing resource for the community. So I do everything I can to support it, even though it goes way over my head.
Well, good. I'm glad I'm not alone in that. But yeah. Well, interesting things like, hey, this rule set turns out doesn't affect at all where we're hitting each other, and it just kind of blows my mind. Like, well, okay, here's the evidence, right?
Yes.
It's like we have this and that and X, Y, Z, and why are we even wasting our time with this and that
Yeah.
and the other? So it's really illuminating and extremely rigorous. And I don't click on every one just because life overwhelms me a lot.
Oh,
And
I
I
get that.
have a lot on my plate right now. But I do click when I have a spare moment, and it is deep. It is so deep. So I
Yes.
met Sean once briefly, but he was keeping score in a tournament, and
That sounds like something he would do. Yeah.
and as you're doing that, you don't want to talk to someone who saw you on YouTube and wanted to fanboy on him, So,
Yeah.
it's not the time, right?
Yeah.
So I did say hi to him, and he has no idea who I am, but I did meet him once.
Sean and I go way back, all the way back to when we were both living in Canada.
Yeah.
When we started Hema together many, many, many years ago. But he does so many amazing things for the community, and I feel very grateful to have him as a friend and as a resource that I can lean on when I need advice. And I do so often.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, he got Sword Stem, and then he has another kind of like adjacent blog. It's called Sword Stuff. So if it's not immediately like relevant to STEM, he puts it on Sword Stuff. So I don't think a lot of people know that blog exists, but it
didn't
does.
even know.
Yeah, and it's awesome. And of course, he's the mastermind behind Hema Scorecard, which has been the backbone of so many tournaments. Like the dude just at this point needs, like, if there was a Hema Hall of Fame, he would be like the first entry because he's done
For
so
sure.
much,
Yeah, the nuts and bolts and the mathematics and just
Yeah, he's been an incredible gift to the community, and I don't think he gets nearly enough recognition for it. So that's just me.
Yeah. We're looking at you, Mr. Franklin.
Yeah, go Sean.
All 10 people who will watch this particular podcast. No,
Yeah.
lots of people are going to watch this podcast.
Yeah.
Or listen to it anyway. So anyway, yeah, that was cool. So Sean, I did meet you once. You don't have any idea who I am, but that's not a bad reflection on you. It was just bad timing on my part.
Well, fortunately, he travels a ton, so running into him is not difficult. He's an easy person to track down, it seems.
Yeah, that's cool. I'll shake his hand one of these days.
Yeah.
So yeah, the AG Open, right? AG Open.
AG Open.
Yeah. Very cool. So you're going to be cutting paper there and showing people up and taking home some shiny medals.
Oh, hopefully we'll see.
Maybe.
I'm a little nervous. They put me in Tier A cutting, which is a huge honor, and I'm really just excited, but
Top
uh,
shelf.
I am I'm definitely going to be competing against people who certainly have the better of me, I think, in this case. So my expectations for pulling a medal is not super high. I don't think it's impossible, but I'm tempering my expectations. You never know.
Yeah. Yeah. There you go. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. You know, I am kind of a jock, especially my younger years, you know, very competitive with myself.
Sure. Yeah.
And if I, you know, that moment where you're competing in a sword tournament and you think it just dawns on you like feeling good. The competition is at a certain, I don't know how to explain it. You just feel like I could win this today.
Yep.
Yeah. And lots of times it doesn't happen. Sometimes it does. You're like, I can win this today.
Oh yeah. I've had that. I've had that for sure. I've also had moments where I've been like, this is not it.
Right. Like, oh, I'm a dumpster fire right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everyone's
Yeah.
so much better than
Sometimes.
me.
Yep.
Yeah.
And secretly you're like, I really hope that they don't submit this to Hema ratings because I know this is not my day. I've had that. I've had that. But
Yeah. But that's the beauty of it, right? I mean, you never know till you get there.
yeah, for sure, for sure. And I think having a good mindset is so important, like having that drive to be like, okay, I can do this, I'm capable of this, is important. But also kind of humbling yourself too. You can't underestimate anybody. If you
No.
walk into a fight and be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna wreck this person, and then you don't. Like
Yeah.
so it's good to have the right mindset going into a tournament, of course.
Keeps you humble, at least most of us.
Oh, it really does. There's many a moments where I've been humbled.
That's the nature of the beast.
It
Brittany,
is.
what else do we need to cover today?
Ah, goodness. Well,
We got the
that's really,
cutting. We
yeah,
got the school.
yeah.
We talked about people gardening.
Yes, yes. I guess people gardening is much more appropriate of a term than people farming. So I think
Yeah,
we did
that
a good
sounds
job on that one.
yeah. Yeah, farming is just so industrial for yeah.
Also
Gar-
has weird implications, but um
yeah.
no, I mean, other than that, I mean, my life kind of revolves around my sword school, and my refuge is in cutting, and that's been my life like completely lately. So,
That's really cool. So, is it fair to say that it's kind of like cutting is your happy place?
yes, 1,000%. I say that a lot, actually. Um, I have a really, or I had a really complicated relationship with competing and with like fighting tournaments.
Yeah.
I was really good at it. I dominated for a really long time, but it never made me happy.
Mm.
Uh, I remember the very first time I've told this story so many times in podcasts and stuff, but it always kind of comes back. Obviously, I've got some repressed feelings on this. Um, my very first time winning a gold medal, my instructor put the gold medal around my neck, and I expected him to be like, "Congratulations," or "I'm so proud of you." And he didn't say that. Instead, he's like, "Prove it wasn't a fluke. Do it again."
Holy crap! That's just
This,
kind of
this was like
hardcore.
this was a gold medal. This was like as good as it's gonna get. And I'm like, oh my god, what if he's right? What if this was a fluke? What if the brackets just shook out in a way that favored me, and I'm really not actually this good? And it was a total fluke. So I went
This
into my next
emotional
tournament.
trowel just
Yeah,
yeah.
I went
Yeah.
into my next tournament, and all I could think about was like, if I don't win, I'm a fraud. And
Oh, awful.
fortunately, I won. And I thought, okay, whew, nice. Okay, we've got this. And then I went into my next tournament and I was like, oh God, but what if you lose now? Like, and it was this perpetual, like,
Like
oh,
training an assassin.
it was horrible. It was this perpetual cycle of, never being good enough. And then when I finally lost and I got a silver, it completely obliterated me mentally.
Wow. Wow.
And yeah, it was so messed up. And I was like, I think I need to step back. And I still competed, but a lot more casually. I
Yeah.
dropped I dropped my main category, which was longsword, and I kind of took up sword and buckler instead. And I had a lot of success in sword and buckler, which was awesome, but I never medaled. I always made top 8, but I never medaled.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is okay. I can enjoy this. But then I found cutting, and for whatever reason, I think it was like because it was very personal. There was nobody that I had to beat. I wasn't facing a ring where, like, on the other side, there's somebody that I had to lose to. Because, like, I hated the idea of, like, somebody beating me and then being able to be like, ooh, I beat her. And, like, using that to, like, kind of prop up their own, right? That made me very insecure. And,
Right.
and I hated that idea. So then I found cutting and I was like, oh, there's no one to blame but me. There's nobody who's in control of this but me. But, like, when you're fighting, you know, you can't control anything. You can only train as much as you can train, and you can't help if that other person is taller, stronger, faster. Like, that's out of your control. You can't help if the judges decide that they didn't see that hit. So, like, it
Yeah.
can feel, and I felt entitled to winning. I think that was part of my problem, is like, my coach always said, you only get out of this what you put into it, which is true. But it was like, he would tell me things like, oh, why weren't you here last night? Like, why weren't you training? Oh, well, I already trained Monday, Tuesday. I thought I'd take Wednesday, and then I have Thursday, Friday. He's like, well, you weren't here, and this other person who you're supposed to be competing against, they were training tonight. Where were you?
Oh,
You're
wow.
only going to get in or get out what you put in. And it freaked me out. So I was training 20 to 25 hours a week. And I felt entitled. I was like, I've put in more time than anybody. I deserve to win. So then when I didn't win, I was like, what have I done wrong? I need to work harder, 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 to the point where it was impossible, right? But then with cutting, because, like, I think the problem was, like, I'd go into these fights, I'd expect to win, but then things that were out of my control would cause me to lose. A judge didn't see this, or I can't help that this guy's 6'4", right? Like, no
Yeah.
matter how many hours I put in, there's just things that I couldn't control.
Yeah. That's quite an advantage. Just that's a big reach advantage.
Well, I'm 100 pounds and I'm 5'6". Like, I'm always physically disadvantaged. Um, but, like, I felt entitled. And when it came to cutting, it was very humbling, because if I failed my cut, I'm the only one who failed it. It's not because there was somebody bigger or stronger cutting that map instead of me. It was on
Yeah.
me. And I really latched onto that, and it became safe for me to fail. Like, I don't know how else to explain that. And I wasn't very good at cutting when I started. Nobody is.
Yeah.
Um, but I think it was when I won my first bronze medal in an open cutting tournament, and I was like, whoa, I might actually be okay at this. And then I wanted to be better at it, but not because I had to prove anything. It was just like a personal goal, right? And I still, at this point, I've got 3 bronze medals in an open and a silver in an open. I have not won a gold. And I'm like, I want to, but I'm not obsessed over it like I used to be.
Yeah.
So it's been a journey, and I think that's why I like cutting so much, is because I've finally been able to have a good relationship with my training, with competing, and just enjoy the process, which I never had that advantage when I started. So anyway, yeah, and a long kind of story. I love cutting, and it's my happy place.
No, that's great. Thank you for opening up and sharing that with us. I mean, that's you know, you were talking about this, and just in my mind, I thought cutting is like sword golf.
It is. It is the Gulf of Hema. I know.
Yeah. and
100%.
and I had this crazy wild thought in my head, like, okay, what if? What if we just made it sword golf? What if there was 18 holes and you had to walk with your sword in this wonderful, serene place, and you're at this different scenic area, and you cut, and then you go off to the next one. Anyway, I was just kind of thinking that in my head as you're describing just this
I love it.
wonderful. Yeah, wouldn't that be cool?
I think that'd be great if somebody wanted to create like an 18-hole cutting course, and it's just leisurely. I'm like, dude, I will give you all the money you want to make that happen.
Man, okay, we're doing this wrong because I think that's where the money is.
Yeah, I was one of the few people when tatami became excruciatingly expensive during and post the pandemic.
Yeah,
I was one of the few people who was like, I don't care how much it costs.
Still buying it.
I'm buying it. I'll drop, $500 on tatami. I don't even care.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's just, I was going to say, I was preparing for a cutting tournament in Finland last January, and my curiosity was kind of piqued. I tracked my spending for preparing for it. All the tatami I purchased, all the paper I purchased. And just in preparing for that tournament alone, I spent a little over $1,000 on it, just on the materials to cut.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So
if you like it.
Yeah. I mean, people will drop thousands of dollars on armor. I can drop.
Oh, easy.
Yeah. I can drop $1,000 on some grass mats. Why not? But I was so dedicated to it and to my training, and I was so passionate about it that I decided, that's where I was going to spend my money, was just on that. And some people thought it was crazy, but, like I said, people will put thousands of dollars into hobbies that, we look at and go like, oh, why would you do that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you could put $1,000 in a gas tank for your boat over the weekend.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right.
Yeah,
so
it's not that big a deal.
Yeah. But yeah, if anybody wants to create an expensive golf cutting excursion, I'll do it. Sign me up.
Noted. Yeah.
Sign me up.
Yeah, that would actually be that would be amazing, actually.
It'd be like a retreat, like on some fancy resort. I'd do it.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, here's your long sword. Here's a quick tutorial. All right. Be safe, everybody.
Yeah, go out there and cut.
Oh, man. Don't drop it.
Yep.
Trust me, don't drop it.
Yeah, don't
drop it on your foot.
Don't try and catch it if it falls. Just treat it like a firearm. You'll be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, but that would be something, wouldn't it? That'd be super cool.
Yeah. I hope somebody takes that idea and runs with it, because I don't have the bandwidth to do that, but I would definitely participate in it.
Yeah. You're talking about complications with competing, and I think a lot of people, for various reasons, sort of it gets complicated for them. And for me, I'm so weird how I got into swords. I mean, sword people are weird anyway. I mean,
of course.
we're all weird together. But I was I had a commute. It was an hour and a half one way, and paying the bills, working in front of a computer all day, and I was, my younger life. Before I was family dude, I played football, I played basketball, I went hiking, I went camping, I went backpacking, rock climbing, like anything with the ball I would play and enjoy it, even if I wasn't any good at it. And anyway, just Mr. Athlete. And so one day I was like, yeah, I'm going to run across this parking lot to get to my car because I want to save a couple, some time. Sure. And I was so humbled I couldn't. I was like across the parking lot, and I thought, dude, you're in your 30s. You are too young for this. This is going to kill you. You're gonna die. Like you keep doing this, you are gonna die. So yeah. So I thought, okay. So what am I gonna do? I gotta be active again. I gotta do this thing. Long story short, I was surfing Amazon one day, and I saw it. There it was. It was a Cold Steel 1.5 polypropylene trainer bat.
Classic.
It said sword, but it feels like a bat. Yeah.
It is, yeah. I
It's
know
just
exactly
this,
what you're talking about. Yeah, I
right?
have
This,
one.
yeah, we all have one, it seems like. And so anyway, I knew nothing, and I started walking around because I had started running before I started, and this is how I learned how to cut, not how to cut, how to swing a sword, the balance. I would walk, and I would swing the sword as I walked, and I would feel out the balance. And I did this. This was, when was this? This was like 2010. And YouTube wasn't what it is today.
Right. Yeah.
So there's all kinds of stuff about swords now, but back in the day there really wasn't. And I learned kind of slowly on myself this weird bohemian journey. Anyway, it was very zen for me. And this is, so I was living in Southern California. I was living in Lake Elsinore because I couldn't afford to live and work in Carlsbad. And for those of you who don't know, you have to be a millionaire to live in a regular house in a regular suburb to live in Carlsbad, California. It's kind of crazy.
Oh wow.
But the CEO of the company I was working for certainly could afford it, and it was great for them and everyone else. And it's beautiful. It's right on the beach, Southern California. Every day is a perfect weather day. So on my lunch breaks, I would go outside. I'd bring my gym clothes, and I'd put them on, and I'd go outside, and I'd catch the sun, and I'd swing my sword, and I'd put in music in my headphones, and it was my happy place. And I would just swing this thing, and I would get rhythmic. I would swing it like just rhythmically, tap, 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 and focus on the motions doing the same thing, exactly the same, just over and over in a rhythm. And it was like, it was intoxicating. That, honestly, it was intoxicating. And so that's how I started with swords, doing stuff like that. And I don't do it like that anymore because my life is busy. Now I'm an instructor and I plan things and I do this, podcast, all that. So it's a different journey for me now. But every once in a while I think back like, wow, I want that hit again. I need to find my happy place again. I'm in my happy place, but it's not the original happy
I
place.
totally get that. It was, cutting was sort of that renaissance for me, that reinvigorating kind of like, because I was definitely getting to the point where I was like, okay, I'm running my sword school, and like, what's the point? And like, I don't want to compete anymore. Mm-hmm. Like, what am I doing for me? Yeah. And when I found it and I kind of just latched onto it, I was like, oh, this is beautiful. This is everything that I missed. And it's been years now, so I just kept running with it.
That's so wonderful. I'm glad that you have your happy place. And just in a broader context, there's a lot of people out there that are just kind of hungry for something, right? They're looking to be grounded. They need something. And for you, it's the cutting. And that kind of circles back to the whole, there's people out there, they're looking for something more. And I, to my core, believe that sword art forms, especially what we do, I'm biased, I like historical fencing. We have a lot to offer for people who are just looking for something, right? More community, more grounding, more release, more challenge, more, the cool thing about what we do is we can't even agree if it's a hobby or a sport or a martial art.
Right.
But that's the strength of it, right? There's something for everybody, that we could be all of those things all at once. And that's the beauty of our community, I think. And I
agree. It's
worth
very
sharing.
Versatile. It's very diverse, and it's got a little bit of something for everybody. And I think that is what makes the community so unique, is that there is really a place for everybody to belong. I think that's what makes it so wonderful.
Yeah, agreed. We have been at this for almost 2 hours, and it doesn't feel like it. It doesn't feel like it.
That went by very fast. Holy moly.
Well, is there, I know I asked this, is there anything else that we need to discuss today?
I think we've covered a good amount of ground. I'm happy to have shared the thoughts that I did. So hopefully it was interesting.
You know what? It really was. You're very gracious for coming on the show. So I want to thank you, Brittany, for coming on. And
Oh, thank
it was
you.
yeah, it was good to get to know you a little bit better and discuss the journey, right? And you know, you have a lot to be proud of, your accomplishments, the things that you've done, right? Just
Thank
the
you.
vision that you've had, the like I would call you uncompromising.
Thank you.
Yeah, in a good way, right? Like you see it, you've done it. You know, you're obviously very skilled. You have this program that you run. You have this place. You've worked hard to get it going, and I think we could use that as a shining example to people
Oh,
who want to take their training to the next level. And the reason I say that as instructors, right? The reason I say that is because there's nothing quite like getting better at swordsmanship than having to teach it and being accountable to teach others.
oh, I agree. That's a whole other level of, taking things to the next step, is being able to not just understand it for yourself, but being able to explain it to others in a way that they can understand is, I think, a depth of knowledge that is really that next kind of phase for a lot of people.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, thank
Yeah.
you for everything you do for the community and for coming on this show.
Oh, thank
Uh,
you. It was my pleasure. I had a lot of fun with it. Thank you.
you're welcome. So Brittany St Leafy, everybody. So let me close off here. Let's do this thing. So everybody, remember to slay your demons, and we'll catch you on the next one. Take care, everybody.